So today's topic is tips and advice navigating the U.S. job market while on an F1 visa. My name is Lisa Santacroce. I'm the Associate Director in Career and Professional Development. And we will have our two panelists introduce themselves in a moment. I'm going to just go through some basic housekeeping things as we kick off the program. I already mentioned that the video is going to be recorded and made available online. You're going to receive a follow-up email after the presentation for where you can access it. It's going to be really important for you all to make sure you RSVP for the event on Connect, even if you haven't already. Please go in and do that afterwards. It's the only way we'll be able to get your email address to then send you the follow-up email. So that would be really great if everyone could do that afterwards. All of the participants, you all are muted right now, but we do have a Q&A box that if you have questions, please ask your questions there. We're going to definitely save time at the end to have the panelists answer questions. One thing that we ask is don't ask specific visa questions. Our panelists, Therese and Kelly, aren't able to give that type of information, but what they are here to do is help give you some resources and share about their experiences about what it was like for them to navigate the F1 visa process, looking for a job, and also give you we'll be moderating the chat box and leave time for that. If you do have a specific question for a panelist, please type their name along with the question so we make sure we know who you want to hear more from. So introductions, again, I'm Lisa. I'm the Associate Director in CPD. Amanda Webb is also joined here as a participant. She's the Director of CPD. And then I'll let Therese and Kelly introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Therese. I am a grad environmental design graduate alum from 2015. And since I graduated, I was able to do an internship at Nike, which was my initial entrance into my my work as an international. And from there, I managed to transition to full-time. And then just about a year and a half ago, I moved to REI in Seattle. So now I'm with REI doing design insights and strategy for our product design and innovation team.
Hi, this is Kelly. I graduated in product design 2017 summer, and I worked at a startup company in Bay Area for about a year and 3 months as a CMF designer. And I recently moved to Logitech, same as a CMF designer.
Great. Okay, so we have a lot of topics to cover, and we want to make sure that we keep on track. We have about an hour dedicated to the program. So we're going to talk quickly and share some information about these main areas. So the first place we want to start is preparing for graduation. So it would be great if the panelists can talk about kind of what the timeline of the process has been and is for students studying on an F1 visa. What does that timeline look like in terms of starting to get paperwork done, starting to explore their options, and how best students can prepare early on so that it's not, bumping up to graduation, which is already a pretty overwhelming and busy time for students?
I'll first talk about job preparation before graduation. So before I graduated, I did multiple internships and extracurricular programs to really understand what I wanted to do after I graduate. That gave me like a clarity, okay, I want to do color, material focused industrial design, and kind of sorting out and understand the industry, like what kind of companies offer that kind of job. And slowly kind of from internship, knowing what you want and do not want from your full-time job. I kind of gathered that all together before I graduated, made a list that kind of helped me to prioritize and also be more specific in what I wanted and which kind of environment I wanted to be in. And I think during my graduation time, I really wanted to gather more information before I just applied to different jobs. So I did a lot of informal information interviews with people from footwear industry, consumer electronic industry, and automotive industry. That really helped me to understand what's possible and what's not possible. For example, like visa question or your responsibility or exposure, which was very important to me. I think in terms of visa, there's a lot of information session offering from ArtCenter, International, was it CES?
CSE.
Yeah. So they offer a lot of information session that I was proactively attending all of them, which helped me to really create my own time frame, because sometimes it can be very confusing, but once you understand, you can really create your own time frame, especially that you will have your own project preparing for graduation and you want to do like information interview like I did. So that's pretty much how I did. I think what I could have done better is I could broaden out a little bit and not to go too specific and kind of really prioritize, but I kind of went in too much, which took a lot of time from my graduation. Maybe Teresa, you can share the other part of your experience.
Yeah, I think I was not very prepared. I did not have the time. I have my own loans for ArtCenter, and I had to work at CPD actually as a student worker and try to graduate. I had so little time to even like think about feeding myself, let alone worry about the visa stuff, which was something I think that I could have done better, is to maybe be a little bit more like Kelly and to actually prioritize. One thing that I did learn at the end of the day is I focused on how I was selling myself as an individual and as a thinker for a company, other than like focusing on exactly what it is that I want to do. Like, oh, I want to be a footwear designer or an architect, or, you know, like very specific things. I think what I benefit from, because I've worked before and in the industry, I've had a long career before I came to ArtCenter. So I knew what I wanted, but what I also knew is that being very prescriptive was going to limit my opportunity and limit my possibilities. So I had no expectations. And I approached that at grad show. I was actually very open about, I don't want to be hired for my skill set. I want to be hired for my thinking and my ability to bring change to a company. And I'm really like focused on my personality and my gut, and being prepared and being very resilient for that. And that opened up a lot of opportunities for me that I could choose from. So I didn't feel the pressure at the end of the day, which was really, really great.
Mm-hmm. Great. And you mentioned when we were talking earlier, just doing more research about what the options are. Can you speak a little bit more about that? And you don't have to get into specifics about it, but just kind of the overall concept.
Yeah. For whether it be that you don't have access to information or that you're not able to go to some of the sessions that CSE have. I think when I was at ArtCenter, the sessions, there were not as many. They're also only focused on maybe a few visa options. There wasn't a broad spectrum. I too late found out what additional visa options are available. I wish that I could have done that. I wish I could have known about that earlier, that there's not just one or two visa options. There's multiple ones. There's multiple ways to address it. And each person's individual experience, individual skill set, and their vision is gonna make it a different fit for everybody. So I wish that I knew that earlier, because then I could have prepared better for the long game, knowing that I was going to be on my F1, my OP, and then go be an OPT extension. So I had 3 years to prepare. Some people only have 1 year, depending on your graduation. So if you really want to start early and really plan for the long game, knowing what other visas are available and which ones could fit you well, is something I found out very, very late, and it really was a difficult process for me because of that.
Thank you for sharing. Kelly, were you
I
going to say?
think if I can add one more comment on what Tris said, what helped me was basically during my graduation time, I was sort of like a sponge, like taking all the information possible, whether it's from friends or from school or from other professional designers or recruiters. What really I could have done better is like what Tris said, if I have prioritized it, whether it's possible, like H-1B is what's the most like known visa that you could apply after you graduate, but there's other options. So like be prepared, like there's plan A, which is like the ideal, you get H-1B and you get full-time job, what you want. But then there's plan B that you also have to consider, and kind of like, I only considered like working in US, but there is a lot of American companies in different locations, like all around the world. That could also be an option. I think be really open-minded, but like know what you really want after your job is kind of what's important, I think.
And I think that includes experience that I had for your internships. My first internship, we only get we actually only get one internship in the grad department. So I had one shot to make it count, and I was a finalist for very big companies, Nike being one of them, and I didn't get any of them. So I was very disheartened, and I had to go do an internship back in South Africa. And I thought that was going to be a nail in the coffin for me. It totally wasn't. I did incredible work there. As an O1 visa holder, I was able to utilize the experience and the work and the accolades that I achieved there at that company during my internship. I really was able to push really hard because they were so much more hungry for it. As a third world country person coming from the US, bringing that new knowledge, I was actually able to achieve a lot more, I think, that I would have if I stepped into a big company in the US. And that was a big, big step for me in my awards category, because we won a bunch of awards for the project that I worked on. And so I also want to encourage people that just because you're an international, sometimes going back home to do more work isn't the worst case. And don't feel like that's going to be the nail in the coffin for you, that is another opportunity, is another way. It is, you just have to keep building.
Thank you. Yeah, all really good points there. And I just want to add some resources that you have available in addition to what Therese and Kelly have been saying. Yes, definitely participate and go to the CSC's programs. They are holding a lot more. At least get to know Diana and Junghan in the CSE office and start these conversations earlier, so there's no information that's going to be a surprise to you once you're approaching graduation. And then through CPD, we have a great resource called Going Global, which you're able to access through ArtCenter Connect. And that's a way for you to really start doing research about which companies historically have hired international students in the past on H-1B visas. And also you're able to look up multinational companies. So like Kelly had mentioned, there could be some US companies that actually have offices in a different country, whether it's your home country or another country outside of the US, that you could be very strategic in applying to that. And if the hope is to come back to the US, there's different ways, and it could be easier to be transferred back. So using Going Global is a great resource. Look up LinkedIn, start to see maybe where some of your friends have started getting jobs after graduation. Stay in touch with your classmates, with your peers, be involved on on campus and start to really think about who your network is here, and then use that as a way to do research about where you might be able to end up once you graduate. Okay, we will jump to the next topic, which is interviewing and after an offer has been received. So Kelly, if you want to start off with that, if you can tell us a bit about how you've navigated the interview process as an international student, and maybe how you've answered some of the questions that might be a bit more challenging.
I think personally, I had a really great experience with the industry night, and I had a lot of people that I met and was able to connect from those people as well. So I was able to interview multiple different companies, and few people that I met from industry night, they connected me with other people, and that really helped me to understand, like, especially the field that I wanted to get into, which is the color material finish design, is very specific, and not many corporate companies offer that kind of job. And I wanted to be in a team where I'm not the only CMF designer, that I could learn from different CMF designer as well, who's more experienced. And that was very challenging to find. But I had a mindset that, okay, I have to talk to everybody, because you never know what opportunity you will get from those people, which really helped me to connect with a lot of different people. And once I got few companies that were really possible to get hired, I kind of went back to those lists that I created that I mentioned earlier, and looked back, okay, what's the most important 3 criteria that I really need, which is number 1, the visa sponsorship. And number 2 was kind of the team. I really wanted the team to be more collaborative and dynamic, at least 2 to 3 people. And then the third one was the responsibility and exposure. And I think you kind of have to give and take, and know how to negotiate, which I looked at a lot of books, and I was talking to a lot of friends who have done it before. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos that really helped me to prepare how to negotiate and be upfront with your visa status, and kind of bring that up early on instead of later on. And also, I did a lot of research on the H-1B process. So there's a lot of resources, but I would really recommend do not rely on one source. Yeah. I would be proactive and not only rely on ArtCenter, CSE, right? But I would also go on the website USCIS, or I would talk to people and gather all the information, so that when you start the visa process, you don't completely rely on company to start your visa process, but you're kind of in charge of it, because a lot of the times you expect the company will be in a full responsibility to make sure that you get the visa, but it's not like that all the time. So you need to know in what stage, what you need to be expected to hear, or you need to be proactively asking for time frame from the attorney. So I think that's how I kind of did. I knew that at certain time I needed to hear back whether I got the H-1B or not. Some people I've realized they didn't know the process, so there is some horror stories, but I think it really helped me that I knew what was coming. How about you, Trace?
I didn't know what was coming. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The H-1B wasn't an option for me for multiple reasons, especially with the field that I'm in. The specific job title that I have formally doesn't even exist. So getting a recommendation letter on an H-1B would have been very, very difficult for me. So I opted for the O1. I'm very lucky that I have a lot of experience behind me to be able to do that. I think my approach was also different because I was on the STEM OPT. So this is maybe a little bit more focused on people that are able to spend a little bit more time, that don't just have 1 year, but have the 3 years. And what I did is I didn't immediately dive into my visa stuff. What I did is I focused on building trust and building confidence in the leaders around me so that they could feel like I am a really big need for the company. So I established the relationship first. And once the relationship was established, I was very vocal about bringing them along and teaching them. The expectation that companies and your leaders and people around you know the process or know that you're international and what's required is the worst assumption that you can have. Even with companies that are very, very big, that have hundreds and thousands of international employees. I mean, at Nike, I had to educate from my manager all the way up to the VP what my process needs to be. So I had to become my own attorney. I had to understand all the lingo. I had to understand all the processes, the timing, everything, so that I can advocate for myself and tell them what they're getting themselves into as well. So that preparation, it took a lot from my side to do that first and build the trust and build the relationship. And then that's when I started to bring in the conversation about, can you guys sponsor me? If not, I would have to look for a different place. And I actually Nike ended up delaying, and I kept saying that. And I actually ended up, by the time I was in a good place with REI, I said to REI, without a doubt, with my negotiation, even before the offer, was I will only accept this offer if I get sponsorship. And by that point, I kind of had a backup with Nike being like, yeah, we will. And by the time that REI made me an offer, Nike's attorneys called me. It took them 1.5 years to call me. Oh so assuming that a company will follow through is not always the case. So really keep your options open. I applied to REI 6 months before they even got back to me. So plan ahead, make sure that you are not doing things last minute, and also make sure, don't underestimate the value of the people around you and what they can provide for you. Pretty much everybody that supported me were people that you would not expect to support you. And you'd need those ambassadors to champion you.
That's great. I think the next topic, educate and advocate for yourself. You two have kind of already been weaving this idea through some of your other answers. If there's anything else you want to share here, any tips or resources you've used, or if you think you've mentioned it already, we can jump ahead, but just giving you the space.
Kelly?
I think I really agree with Tris, and I was actually really surprised when I first got hired from startup, and I had to kind of like educate them like what process I needed. I was surprised how my manager had no idea, even though she was coming from she was coming from Fitbit, which is quite big corporate consumer electronic wearable company. And there's a lot of international people working there, but she had zero idea. I think that especially for me, I graduated straight from college, and I was kind of spoiled from CSE that they will tell you, they will send you an email when it's ready or when it's time to get additional sign from Zhonghan. But that never happened at the company. They will not email you if you need certain stage. You have to email them that they need your signature or they need to do certain stages. I was quite surprised that you have to be very proactive and don't expect the other side will know already what needs to be done.
Yeah. It's really you cannot drop the ball on that. You have to be always on and always thinking about it. In addition, one of the things that if I look in hindsight all the way back, what I could have done differently, if I just knew what my potential opportunities were, I would have approached the O1 much, much sooner. And whether it's an O1 or any other type of visa, every single moment, every single opportunity, whether you're working for a company or freelancing or whatever the case is an opportunity for you to build on your visa and to really like build a strong case for anybody to want to hire you, and also for you to be able to fit into any genre of visa that you can find. So if it's an opportunity for me, like this is an opportunity doing a panel, I can put that and say I've been on a panel. Or if it's to be able to be a judge at a high school, event, like to judge other designers' work. I did architects in school with Oregon Foundation, where I would go teach us, high school and grade school students about architecture and design thinking. So any and every opportunity, get involved in your community, get involved in with the school, with everybody as much as you can, because every moment is an opportunity that you're building a strong case for yourself, that one day when immigration or the people that review you look at you and whether your contribution, whether it's a company or United States USCIS, they will see that you're a significant candidate. So don't underestimate the small things either.
I think what Tris did really great, and like I feel like now that I'm listening, if I could have done better, is the confidence that you could like really educate the other people. Like in the beginning for me, I felt like it's nothing to be shy about, but like I felt it's an extra work for the company. So I was kind of not really selling myself. I thought it's something that I should do more work than other people because the company put more money on me. But I think it's kind of, now that I'm thinking, it's not the right way to think. Like you have full right to be confident and not shy about your status, and just talk about and like be open to share what stage you are in. And I think really like know your strength and sell your strength instead of dive in and think about all the realistic I need sponsorship. Like I think prioritize to sell yourself more than what you need from the company. I think that's what's really great about Tris's comment. Like I think it would be great if I knew that earlier, but I was too shy to bring it up from like beginning on, I think.
It's scary.
Yeah.
I was terrified that if I told them that I need a sponsorship, that I was not going to get the job. Like that was it is a real fear. And I think a lot of people do actually have that experience because it's an additional. I actually tried to get an ArtCenter alum hired here at REI very recently. And because he's an international and not a high skill, that he's not a senior designer, they don't sponsor below that. So how do you make yourself a senior without having the experience, right? So like, that's where I say like those little things, let them count in your favor. So when you go and talk to someone and you're at an interview and you're advocating for yourself, you're saying, well, I bring, the fact that you're an international is a checkbox for a company that they want. You bring different type of thinking. So bring anything to your table that's going to make you seem and more appealing than just what we perceive as the burden of an international and the visa process. Look at the plus side and how a company could perceive that and lead with that and put aside all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very important, and obviously because you two have gone through it, you're speaking in hindsight. So I understand for some students listening now, and there are some alum who I believe are listening as well, that will come, that confidence will come with experience. But like you're saying, it's so important to advocate for yourself and share all of the different things that you can bring, because if you're not telling the employer that, they have no idea. So you're only in charge of sharing your own story. And there's this fine line between being assertive and aggressive, but there's something to be said. And I think it resonates well with employers when you are confidently stating what your worth is. And for Therese to say, I'm not going to accept this job if I can't get sponsorship, because that was a very real thing for you. So in that case, it doesn't make sense to sugarcoat anything at that point, because you're only harming the relationship potentially between the employer and yourself, because then you're kind of wasting everyone's time. So it's about finding that way to finesse your answers and promote yourself and what you bring that's unique to yourself and your skills to their company. And if you're not painting that picture for them, no one else is, and that's really doing yourself a disservice in my opinion. So of course it's very scary to, you know, wonder the right time to bring up your visa status in an interview, but honestly they're going to find that out at some point anyway. So if you can be ahead of it and you can just say, okay, we all know that I'm going to require visa or I'm on an OPT, but this is what I can bring and this is what the process is if you did want to sponsor me. Because a lot of it is just educating the employer. It seems like a very overwhelming process to them, because think about how it feels to you not knowing it yet. So if you're doing that homework and approaching them with a plan and you're like, see, this is all you have to do, they're like, oh, okay, they just didn't know it. So you can have the ability to make some real change and advocate for yourself, and then that can maybe set up a positive relationship in the future for them to hire more international students. So I know everyone is very busy with their courses, and once you're in ArtCenter, you're like, I can only focus on the classes that I'm taking right now, but this is one of those things that you really do have to start planning and doing a little bit of homework each term so that you feel well prepared, well educated on your future, because it is your future. Support systems. So this is a topic that Teresa and Kelly had both said a lot about. So I'm going to leave this to them to talk about the immense value that having a support system had for their experiences.
So I will definitely start off where Lisa left off with the previous topic, and being at school and doing your classes. Your teachers are incredibly knowledgeable. They're incredibly supportive. Rely on them and go to them and ask them, you know, like what they think, not just from your work, but you as an individual, how you can change or shape your approach so that when those employers come, that you are talking about your whole self, not just your work. Especially because you're going to have to like advocate for yourself beyond your work. And then I think one of the things that got me through was other international students also applying. I had one person that was an incredible source of support for me and also shared their experience and shared their process that helped me get through it. And they applied for their O1, I think, 4 or 5 months before I did. So they were a little bit ahead of it. And at the same time, you know, once you're in your company and once you're at work, your colleagues, everybody around you, I think for me, the big unlock was getting someone that advocated for me. You just need one advocate to really get your work to be seen and to be noticed. And that's when you can start to push for getting things recognized and awards and things like that. So even like just getting that internal recognition from a business perspective is really, really helpful. And also like an incredible emotional support system. And I will say on the flip side, if a company isn't being supportive and they're lagging and they're not giving you the feedback that you're hoping and you're feeling lost, have the hard conversation super early so that you're not waiting till the last minute, because you can maybe potentially leave and go somewhere else that will give you a better chance. And I think that's another thing in hindsight, that if I was a little bit firmer and more upfront with Nike sooner, I could have either have left earlier and started a less stressful process sooner, or they would have come to the table much faster.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I think I had already a lot of conversation with friends, like casually about visa, not only H-1B during your time at college, like when you're in F1, there's a ton of questions. And that kind of continued. And I think knowing that you're going through the same process, not only yourself, but with other people, is very, very supporting, and like you feel not alone. And know that, like, you know, everybody's applying probably similar places, but just know that they're not all like competitors. You guys are going through the same process, and feel free to share. Like, for me, I was really open to share my resources and the struggles, what I was going through, the like confusion, and what helped me and what didn't help me, which really opened up other friends that I wasn't very close with. They also started to open up, and like we start to have more conversation, which helped both of us to get more information that helps us to prepare in case something happens. I think, like, I'm going back to what we talked about, like, as much as you do the research and as much as you know what the process is and you have your strategy and plan, actually like negotiating and actually bringing this matter up and like actually feel confident to talk to people like openly is kind of intimidating and scary. But I think having a friend that you can really freely talk about these matters like definitely helps, because sometimes like I know all the process, like I know what needs to be done, but actually bringing that up to the manager, like I don't know how to like actually say it that is confident enough and like friendly enough. That really helped from my friends like who have done it before, that I could really freely ask like, so what did you actually say? Like, what did the manager actually react to? Because like you can freely talk about these things, like you can't get that from like computer. I think that really helped me to have this kind of friendship and like support system to go through this process together.
Yeah, I can definitely reiterate on that. I think at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter. Like I'm approaching my mid-30s. I've worked a lot, and it still was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. I still get comfortable talking about it. And at the end of the day, the more support you have, the more equipped you are to talk about it, not just with your friends and family, but also to talk to employers about it. And then also where it was big for me is finding the right attorney and talking to an attorney about it. So the attorney doesn't block you and tell you, no, you should be doing this. I've had attorneys that told me, don't go for the O1. You're not qualified enough. I had 6 attorneys tell me that. And I had to find, and I refused to take that as an answer. And I found the right attorney that supported me. And in the meantime, I did my due diligence, learned from those attorneys and what they told me was missing. I filled those gaps and ended up being successful in that case. So having that support system is really giving you the confidence. And I had friends that told me that got their O1. They were like, but you've done so much more than I have, and I have an O1, so you should have your O1. And I also want to touch on something that Kelly spoke about, is like your peers, your international peers are not your competition. I've heard some horror stories where people, because you're fighting for your life and fighting for a job, people undermine each other to get that opportunity. I've never heard that working out for either party. So the people that I've heard are successful, and the people that I know are successful from our own experience, is the people that share and are open and that are supporting and helping each other. Our community is incredibly powerful if we activate it and if we're not scared, and if we have the empathy. There's going to be a lot of tears, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. So be there for each other and help each other, because that's really, really the only way that I was able to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's super important to be real about it, right? It's like we're talking all about the logistics and the process and all of that, but that emotional piece and just how overwhelming and kind of beyond your control some of the pieces of it are. It's just important to know that going in, and as long as you're doing everything you can and doing your due diligence and relying on your networks that you've created here and making new connections with people, even if you haven't had class with them, right? Just like even you two can be resources, and each person has their network, and it's all about, you know, you're part of the ArtCenter network, but then within that, you're part of this other network too, and not being afraid to help each other out just because you don't know each other, right?
And don't be afraid. I just want to add to that one more, Lisa. Don't be afraid to ask. I've had people from my past colleagues that are now working in other companies that have international people that's going through struggles that have emailed me. I've never met them before and emailed me and said, how did you do this? What did you do? Don't be afraid to ask people, to ask other people, to ask other people. Like the connection can be from anywhere. So don't be afraid to ask and be bold and ask. It's hard. I've definitely been humbled and learned the value of asking. And you're definitely going to be better for it.
I mean, by the way, Teresa and I, we never took a class together, or we weren't like that close at ArtCenter, but I asked a ton of questions to Teresa, and she was so open and like open to help and share, which kind of really like, you start to appreciate more of this kind of relationship. So this is, I think, a good example.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's important to know that you're asking these questions, and everyone's going to have an individual experience. So what I think the main takeaway is ask questions, do research, compile all of your information, and then ultimately you do what works best for you. There's not one size fits all approach to it, but if you don't know what all of the options are, you're not going to be able to make an informed decision. So I think that's just an important piece to add to that, just because if Kelly typed out everything that she had done and passed it on, that wouldn't necessarily work for anyone else. Same thing with Therese. So hopefully you're just pulling out some tidbits of information that you might resonate with a little bit more or less, and then ultimately you're going to still have to make this your own journey and your own experience. But at least just knowing some of the work that had been done before you can be passed on, and I think it's a good opportunity to then pay it forward to the next group of students. I think we have one more topic quickly to go over, and then we can open it up to any questions. So if you have any, start typing them in the chat box. Resources. So Kelly, you had mentioned that you've watched some YouTube videos, and you mentioned some other resources. If there's anything specific you want to share.
I mean, I think there is ton in like YouTube. I specifically watched YouTube for negotiating salary and benefits, but I would recommend, I mean, it all depends on what you're looking for. There is a ton of videos that focuses on very different matters. Let me see. But I find Linda Rainier very helpful. I would spell it Linda, last name Raynier. She talks about how to talk confidently, and she talks about how to negotiate with confidence, like not just like strategy, but like she will actually give an example, which helped me to understand a lot. And also, as I would add another resource that was very helpful. Oftentimes when you go through this visa process, like a lot of the times you have a question, but you don't know who to ask for it, like all this legal matters. And especially in Bay Area, for like an hour consultation fee is like a few $100s, which is kind of crazy to me. So I was looking up a lot of free consultation, and I found like anywhere on Google, if you type free consultation for like 15 minutes, it's like a lot of them are free, which I didn't know. So like I actually paid $150 for one time just for like 2 questions. But I think research a lot, but I just want to share out that there is like a free consultation if you have 1 or 2 questions about legal matters. Just because like I wanted to know like what's really possible. Like I didn't want to rely completely on my company attorney. Like I also wanted to gather different opinions. So it kind of helped me as well. And also I find CPD a lot helpful when it comes to job hunting, strategizing it. And I did a lot of mock interviews. I was probably one of the most visited students, I think,
I think you were. That's a fact.
So I find CPD very, very helpful. Even if you have, like, if you want someone to look over your resume, or especially someone who's like English is not first language, like I find it very helpful to go over like cover letters. So I think that is all what I have. Yeah.
I didn't even tell Kelly to say that. That's actually a true story. She was most visited student throughout her time here.
Well, if you want to get technical, Lisa, I was the most visited student because I literally worked there.
That is true. But we can absolutely help you with any piece of your application process, helping you do mock interviews and actually testing out how to answer those tough questions. Just because you want to prepare for that ahead of time and really try to see how the language flows out. You might think it sounds great when you're practicing in your head, but it's really not until you start speaking out loud, even if it was to yourself. Things just kind of get jumbled. So the more you can practice and finesse those answers, the more confident you're going to be entering that interview, whether it's on the phone or in person. We can also help with resumes, cover letters, doing outreach to people. So kind of the way we're just saying like, oh, reach out to so-and-so and ask this question. Sometimes that might be a little bit overwhelming and nerve-wracking if you don't know where to start. So you can type up some drafts of an email or a LinkedIn message, and we'd be happy to review that for you so that you feel like you're asking these important questions in a really professional way. We also have another resource called Big Interview, which is a digital mock interview tool. You're able to either do an actual mock interview, record yourself answering questions, and we can give you feedback, or what it's really comprised of is this interviewing curriculum. So you can watch different short series, like kind of like imagine listening to a podcast, for example, about how to answer a salary negotiation question, how to answer anything from your strengths and weaknesses, traditional questions and untraditional questions. So just even listening to the type of content that you're expected to give in those answers is really helpful. And then that recording component of actually watching yourself in the interview process and practicing your answers is really beneficial to see what that all looks like before you get in the room or on the phone with the recruiter, the designer, or the employer that you're interviewing with. I think I'll reiterate going global again. That's through ArtCenter Connect. We're going to send a follow-up email probably by the end of the week with a link to where you can see this video and some other resources that we'll share as an attachment. But I just want to make sure if anyone had any questions that we save some time there, and you can ask them in the Q&A box that you should all see. So we'll just kind of hang a second before we end the call of the program.
I see questions in the chat.
Yeah, there's someone that asked about military background.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anyone specifically going through the visa process or anything like that. I do. My now husband is actually his whole family's from the VA. So I was actually speaking to a lot of his family members on my process and some of the things they've learned. I don't think any of it is a disadvantage if you didn't or anything like that. It's really about figuring out what do you have in your toolbox right now and how do you turn all of that into an advantage. And if there is anything that you feel is a disadvantage, especially with something like that, I would be much more comfortable if you spoke to like an attorney and ask specifically about your unique situation, if that makes sense.
I think he specifically, I mean, I don't know if I'm understanding it correctly, but I think he's specifically asking about the Korean military because like all the guys have to go military for 2 years, and if you don't go back to Korea at a certain age, you're kind of restricted to come back to Korea. I'm not sure if that's what he's exactly referring to, but I think this is more a legal question than what we can answer. Like if he's asking if not going to military, which is what you have to do as a Korean man, if that will disadvantage visa process in America, I don't know. I haven't heard any story like that, but you will definitely have a disadvantage in Korea. I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think the way that I know that the legal systems, you have to see them as separate. The US legal system is very separate to your country's legal system. They don't often cross, in my experience. There's a lot of stuff going back on in South Africa that would be seen as bad. But as far as I know, in my experience, the two legal systems have never really clashed or integrated or fed one or the other. The U.S. legal system is very much about the U.S. So, but you should definitely follow up with an attorney on that.
Yeah.
I could not be giving you the right information.
Yeah. We have one question. It says, would you mind talking about choosing between two job offers and weighing them out, and also some tips for negotiating salaries?
You want to go first?
Sure. I normally when I negotiate, I don't just put salary on the table. I also put, since we're international people, I want to be able to go home and visit my family. And it takes a long time to get to South Africa from Seattle. So some of my negotiation is actually negotiating time off as well. And just being open and honest about what your requirements are in that sense, and additional being able to negotiate your salary, and being able to like look at what is not just currently people getting, like understanding that, but also then bringing up, like I spoke, those extra things that you're doing that's putting together you as a whole person. When you put all of that in front of a company, you have a lot more leverage to negotiate. And secondly, choosing between two companies, I think it's you got to sometimes go with your gut on that. But at the end of the day, depending on where you are in your visa situation, the company that you're going to feel the most trust, that's going to be the most trust, is the one I would go for. The reason I stuck with REI after Nike also offered me the visa was I didn't trust Nike to follow through. I was worried that if something was going to happen, which I did get stuck in South Africa for 2 months. And if that situation happened and I was under Nike, I don't feel confident that I could have trusted them to support me through that, where REI was 100% supportive. So I would go for the company that you trust will be there for you when things get really tough with your visa.
That's a really good point. For me, I already got H-1B from the startup, my first job. So when I got an offer from second job, I got 2 offers from different team in one company. And going back to the backstory, this is the company that I actually really wanted to go in after I graduated, which I got referred from the professor and I had a time to chat with. But again, not everything works out, even though you have all the research strategy and plan. There wasn't any head count, so by the time when I was like 1 year and 2 months ahead of my first job, I kept them in contact even after I got the first job. So they reached out to me and I got an offer from 2 different business groups in the one company. And I kind of took the H-1B out of my list because I already had a H-1B, but I really wanted to move forward with green card. So I put the green card on my top priority, and then kind of list out another priority like base salary, or if you can't negotiate base salary amount the way you want, what other elements you can negotiate. I looked up a lot. I asked CPD, and I found you could negotiate paid time off, you could negotiate exposure, like a career growth, development. There's a lot of different matters you can negotiate, but I think it's a matter of what's important to you. So for me, in the end, I did end up choosing one group that has the biggest team and offered me the most exposure. But I did, so whatever that I didn't prioritize in the higher list ended up not be the part of it. Like, for example, the type of work I was definitely more interested on the other team, but I would rather choose the team that has most exposure than doing exactly what I want to do, because I can always make the best out of what I've given to. So I think it depends on what's important to you in terms of negotiating benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And salary, like what Therese said, understand like normally how much is given to junior level or your level. So I did brief research and I kind of created a range. And I watched a lot of YouTube video how to strategize and like negotiate. So that helped me a lot. Yeah, I think I covered the question. Yeah.
One of the biggest tips I've ever gotten for when you're looking for any company and making a decision that I learned only recently in my life after being in this game for a while is look for good leaders. It doesn't matter what company you work for. It doesn't matter what projects you're on. It doesn't matter what your role is, what your title is. It doesn't matter how much money you get paid. None of that matters if you have crappy leaders.
Yes.
So look for good leadership, people that are not just leaders but are mentors, people that can help you grow, and actually that's going to accelerate you as an individual, you as a person, and your career, and they will advocate for you when you want to do your visa stuff when it gets serious. So that is the biggest, and I learned that from my old manager when I came to REI. He was like, as long as you find good leadership, I'm happy that you leave. That's all I ask for you. And that was the best advice I ever got from any leader, any person in the work industry. And it's something I'm going to live by for the rest of my life.
Do you have a tip how to know like whether that person is a good leader or not? Because like you will have few chances to talk to them when you do an interview.
When you're in an interview, normally they put you with the leader and then they put you with some of the team people that work under that manager. When they ask you, do you have any questions for us? Ask, what's your relationship with your manager? Just asking that. You can quickly, people will tell you, and obviously they might lie a little bit, but you can see from people's body behavior and their tone of voice if that person's completely ridiculous or not. So that's the best I can go for.
Good.
I also want to add one last thing. I mean, I haven't done this way, but I've seen cases that once you get an offer, some people ask if they can have another, like a coffee or lunchtime, just to really have a casual conversation to get to know them. Mm-hmm. I think before you make a decision, when you have multiple offers, spend time to talk to them and find a way to get to know them is also, I think, a good way. Like, you don't only have to have one interview to make all the decision.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point to add. We are out of time, and I know I want to just be mindful of everyone's schedules. Therese and Kelly are actually at work right now, so we want to make sure that any other meetings they have, they're good to go. We did have one question that's on the side. As someone starting your career with not many years of experience, what would you be looking for in a job aside from H-1B visa? Examples: team, people, culture, benefits, work-life balance. I think they kind of did touch upon that with Therese saying like leadership is really important. I would just add that that's going to be a very individual decision. Everyone, you might value something over the other thing that someone else values. So work-life balance might be really important, especially if you have a family or you just want to have very strict boundaries with that. The company culture might be more important to you than it might be to someone else, depending on the industry, the location, all of that. And there are definitely some resources CPD can help you with, especially in terms of the negotiating, evaluating offers. So we can send that in our follow-up email as well. I just want to thank everyone for logging in and joining us on our first ever virtual Power Hour. Super exciting. And I definitely want to thank Therese and Kelly for giving back to the community and taking the time out of their day to share everything that they went through. And hopefully they were able to share some knowledge with you that will help you in your journey as you start approaching graduation, or if you have recently graduated, as you continue to navigate the F1 visa status. So we're going to log off. We will stop and share this video with you all. And again, as a reminder, please log into ArtCenter Connect to RSVP for the program so we have your email address and we can follow up over email. Okay, thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.